Good morning, everyone. It's pleasure to be here anytime in the pretext of our own book, though it is difficult because indirectly we'll be talking about our own book, which is, I always feel a bit vulgar. But that's how it is. And I think it's a translation and it's a wonderful conversation already we had in the book itself. The book itself is a product of a translation, a conversation. So I'm very happy Tejaswini is here and I have adored her work since last, you will be surprised, in fact we are ourselves surprised that our books came, her first book of poetry in English and my first book of poetry in Kannada, both came in 1972-73. That is almost 50 years ago. And I don't want to believe it. So it's my compliments to her. She's basically a poet. And then, of course, she has translated from English to Kannada, Julius Caesar. She has brought Pablo Neruda. And from Kannada to English, she has Vaidehi, his short stories, Niranjana, her illustrious father's books, and of course, my books now recently. So she has done translations both way, which is a very unique virtue, because otherwise you always feel, one person doing from one language to another. There is a osmosis, reverse osmosis, whatever you call, happening between two languages. So it's very, I'm really happy to be talking about it to her also. Teju, I want you to start asking you that how did you pick the stories? Like or did you choose, what was it which made you pick those stories or particular stories? I mean, this applies to our earlier book also, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
This wasn't the question I was expecting, but I think that's fine. I never saw the selection of the stories as being my sole prerogative, although, I'm the translator. People always ask me, is the book No Presents Please and Mithun #2, what are the original books in Kannada? They simply assume that there's an existing collection that I have translated. And it takes me quite some effort to point out that these are assembled for the purpose of translation from a series of books that Jayant has been writing over the years. So yes, there's a very active process of selection, but it would not have been possible without the help of the author. Sometimes obstructive, but usually helpful. I can talk more about that if there's time as to what were the points of friction in the selection process. But by and large, I have always admired Jayant's Mumbai stories. And the reason is perhaps because they really we actually spent many years in Bombay on and off, but never in the same space, or we never actually have met each other in Bombay, which is quite surprising, considering how much time both of us have spent there. However, I think we both have a strong sense of insiderism as far as Bombay is concerned, and also a sense of being a curious and amused bystander to what's happening in that city. So this sense of the insider-outsider is very much there. I think even in the way the stories are put together, and I think that I may have sort of drifted towards choosing those kinds of stories that spoke to our shared experience. So yes, I think there's a difference, however, between the first book, the No Presents Please, and the second one, and I'll just take a minute to explain what I see as the difference. In No Presents Please, we had stories that were all set in Bombay. The characters were all migrants into Bombay for the most part. They spoke multiple languages. None of them, or very few of them, were Kannada speakers. And I actually commented on this in my afterword to the book, saying that there is no immediate linguistic constituency that is represented in Jayant's stories, which is why, to a strange extent, and perhaps not so strange, the reason why he's not immediately seen as a Kannada writer representing a Kannada audience. His characters don't always speak Kannada. I think this was difficult to understand, capture, because they seem to be speaking Kannada so effortlessly, but we know they're not Kannada people at all. So this is another unique feature of the Bombay stories. The second volume, and I'll stop here, the second volume, we decided couldn't simply continue what the effort of the first one was to have more stories about migrants into Bombay who are not Kannadigas at all. Instead, we thought we would try and capture, in at least half the stories, the kind of people who took the long journey along the coast into Bombay from different parts of, basically the coastal parts of Karnataka. So you have occurring in the stories the names of numerous small towns that even Kannadigas who live in Bangalore would not have heard, because they are really very, very small towns and villages along the coast. And people go from there, and very often you hear the train, but actually the bus is the main mode of transport along the coast. You have a large number of bus journeys and truck journeys that are there in the stories. You have the story of people coming into Bombay, the moment of arrival in Bombay, and very soon after the moment of transformation into a Mumbaiker, right? So this also I find very fascinating, and this is there in at least half the stories in the second book, Mithun number 2. Jayant, let me ask you a question. So we've been talking about Bombay, Mumbai. What's the status of Mumbai in your stories? Is it a setting, is it a character, or is it something else?
I don't know, I mean, how to differentiate this. I mean, like, it's all, everything is there. It creates a space, you know, like, the space word has also become very, very cliche nowadays. Everybody says, I need my space. I think it is somewhere up there. So, so this Mumbai for me is like water for any fish. If my stories are, or my writing attempts are, if you say it is a fish, Mumbai is a otter. Mumbai is the sea for it. They can behave like that. They can be what they are only if it is there. That's what Mumbai means to me. You know, it liberated me. It's a liberating space. It liberates, as you said, from your linguistic slots. It liberates you from whatever you carried. So I use an expression always to talk about my journey from a small town like Gokarna to Mumbai in 1976, and how the transformation was. In Mumbai, it was Kailasada Kayaka. We call, you know, work is worship. You know, like, so it was a, like, Kailasa of work. It was a working city, which liberated me. And I was from Gokarna, where Kailasave Kayaka, where work itself was worshipping. I mean, like, so this kind of a total transformation, ulta, complete ulta thing, which liberated me, maybe many like me. So Mumbai, in a way, liberating in many which ways, like even linguistically, Mumbai Hindi, I have said it many times, has its own kind of a tone, texture, and expression. There is no, you know, plurality there. It speaks in singular. Tere ko, mere ko, aata hai kya, jata hai kya. Anybody, it's not just between friends. Anybody can talk to anybody, so-called big person. तेरे को अच्छा है, तू AC में बैठता है, हम तो धूप में बाल सुखाता है. It's like this. So this informality is also another kind of a liberating thing for me. So it's a city of plurality where so many languages are there. They are speaking in singular. So that itself is very, very spiritual to me. So since when I start talking about Mumbai, I don't stop fast. So I will wind up here with a couple of things about Mumbai. And there was some spirituality reference came in the earlier session. Yeah, that word is also like space has become a very interesting word nowadays, spiritual. I find Mumbai very spiritual because see, one word I will tell you, the death, somebody is passing away. We usually refer to it in a very, respectfully, like he passed away, or वो गुजर गए, वो अब नहीं रहे, वो भगवान को प्यारे हो गए, all these things, तीरकोंड्रू. Mumbai has one word for it, which is so spiritual. It says, off ho gaye. See, that cannot be more than this. It's off or on, like this mic. So that element, that kind of element where you outgrow, you transcend amidst your routine, is what Mumbai means to me. It's like it's amidst routine. Said what you call as dainika, it becomes daivika in this kind of a sense. That way, I think Mumbai helped me in so many ways in my search for the known and the unknown.
There's an interesting contrast between the Dainika and the Daivika. So we have a story here for you that we'd like to read a page from. Jayant will read in Kannada and then I will read it in English. In Kannada it's called Hostilu and in English it's called Threshold. Jayant, the usual first page and a half.
Hello. Story is Hostilu. It's a story about a scrap shop where you usually find them in every corner of any road in Bombay, like where you get an old fridge from an old house or a small mirror or different things. There is a scrap vendor who is sitting there. So it's a very interesting thing. There is a gas stove there, all rusted. There is a kerosene stove there. There's a mirror. All these things will be there. So the story is all about what happens in that. So I am telling you the background because you don't know what is going to happen in this paragraph. That's why. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಓದ್ತೇನೆ. ಹೊಸ್ತಿಲು. ಪೇಟೆಯ ಕಡೆಗಲ್ಲಿಯ ತಿರುವಿನಲ್ಲೇ ಮುಚ್ಚಿ ಮಿಯಾನ ಮೋಡ್ಕಾ ದುಕಾನು. ಮೊದಲಿಗೆ ಈ ಎರಡು ಶಬ್ದಗಳನ್ನು ವಿವರಿಸುವುದು ಉಚಿತ. ಮುಚ್ಚಿ ಅಂದರೆ ಮೀಸೆ. ಅವನ ನಿಜ ಹೆಸರು ಪ್ರತಾಪ್ ಸಿಂಹನಾದರೂ ಕೂಡ ಬಹುತೇಕ ಈ ಗುಜರಿ ದಂಧೆಯಲ್ಲಿರುವವರೆಲ್ಲ ಮುಸಲ್ಮಾನರೇ ಎಂಬ ಗ್ರಹಿಕೆಯಿಂದಾಗೋ ಏನೋ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಬಾಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವನು ಮುಚ್ಚಿಮಿಯ. ಆದರೆ ಈ ಶಹರಕ್ಕೆ ವಿಶಿಷ್ಟವಾದ ಸಂತೆಯ ಸಲಿಗೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಗೆ ಕರೆಸಿಕೊಳ್ಳುವುದರಲ್ಲಿ ಅವನಿಗೆ ಯಾವ ಮುಜುಗರವೂ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಕರೆದಾಗೆಲ್ಲ ಹಣ್ಣಾಗುತ್ತಿರುವ ತನ್ನ ಮಿಲಿಟರಿ ಮೀಸೆಯನ್ನು ನೀವಿಕೊಂಡು ತಿರುಗುತ್ತಿದ್ದ. ಇನ್ನು ಮೋಡ್ಕಾ ದುಕಾನು ಎಂದರೆ ಮುರಿದ ಮನೆಗಳ ಅವಶೇಷಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾರುವ ಅಂಗಡಿ. ಜಂಗು ತಗಡಿನ ಚೂರಿನಿಂದ ಹಿಡಿದು ಲಡ್ಡು ಕಿಟಕಿ ಬಾಗಿಲುಗಳ ಚೌಕಟ್ಟು, ಮೊಂಡು ಹೊಸ್ತಿಲು, ಸೀಳಾದ ಕನ್ನಡಿ, ಹಿಡಿಕೆಯೇ ಇಲ್ಲದ 100 ಸ್ಕ್ರೂಡ್ರೈವರ್ಗಳು, ಹಿಂದೆ ಮುಂದೆ ಎರಡೂ ಇರದ ದೆವ್ವದಂಥ ಫ್ರಿಜ್ಜು, ಉದರ ತೆರೆದು ಕೂತ ಹಳೆ ರೇಡಿಯೋಗಳು, ಹರಪ್ಪ ಮತ್ತು ಮೊಹೆಂಜೋದಾರೋದಿಂದ ಸೀದಾ ನಡೆದು ಬಂದಂತಿರುವ ಹರಕು ಪ್ಲಾಸ್ಟಿಕ್ಕಿನ ಸೋಫಾಗಳು. ಈ ಶಹರದ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇದನ್ನು ಭಂಗಾರ ಅಂತಲೂ ಕರೀತಾರೆ. ಬಾಂಬೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಸ್ಕ್ರ್ಯಾಪ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಭಂಗಾರ. ಇನ್ ಕನ್ನಡ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಬಂಗಾರ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ಎಲ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಎ ವಿರೋಧಾಭಾಸ ದೇರ್. ಈ ಶಹರದ ಭಾಷೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇದನ್ನು ಭಂಗಾರ ಅಂತಲೂ ಕರೀತಾರೆ. 10 ಚದುರಡಿಯ ಇದೆಲ್ಲದರ ನಡುವೆ ಮದುವೆ ರಿಸೆಪ್ಷನಿನ ಹರಕು ಸಿಂಹಾಸನ ಒಂದರ ಮೇಲೆ ಮುಷ್ಟಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಸಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದ ಸಿಗರೇಟನ್ನು ತನ್ಮಯನಾಗಿ ಎಳೆಯುತ್ತಾ ಕೂತಿರುವ ಮುಚ್ಚಿಮಿಯ ಯುದ್ಧದ ನಡುವೆಯೇ ರಾಜ್ಯ ತೊರೆದು ಓಡಿ ಬಂದ ರಾಜನಂತೆ ಕಾಣುತ್ತಿದ್ದ. ದಿನಕ್ಕೊಂದು ವಿನ್ಯಾಸದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿಯ ಮನೆಯ ಸೀನಿನಂತೆ ಈ ಅವಶೇಷಗಳನ್ನು ಜೋಡಿಸಿ ಹಳದಿ ಬಣ್ಣದ ಟವಲಿನಿಂದ ಎಲ್ಲದರ ಮೇಲಿನ ಧೂಳನ್ನು ತೆಗೆಯುತ್ತಲೇ ಇರುತ್ತಿದ್ದ. ಪ್ರಾತಾಭಿನಯದಂತೆ ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಈ ಸಿಂಹಾಸನದಲ್ಲಿ, ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ಆ ಸೋಫಾದಲ್ಲಿ, ಮಗದೊಮ್ಮೆ ಕಲ್ಲುಗಳನ್ನು ಸೇರಿಸಿ ಸ್ಥಿರಗೊಳಿಸಿದ 3 ಕಾಲಿನ ಮಂಚದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂರುತ್ತಿದ್ದ. ಗಟಾರದ ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದಿಷ್ಟು ಹಲಗೆ ಮುಚ್ಚಿದ್ದರಿಂದ ಓಡಾಟಕ್ಕೆ ಜಾಗವಿತ್ತು. ಈ ಅಂಗಡಿಯದೇ ಒಂದು ಭಾಗವಾಗಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟಂತಿದ್ದ ಒಂದು ಮರ ಆಗಾಗ ಒಂದಿಷ್ಟು ನೆರಳನ್ನು ದಯಪಾಲಿಸುತ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ನಾಟಕದ ಈ ಸೆಟ್ಟಿಗೊಂದು ದೃಷ್ಟಿಪಟ್ಟು ಇಟ್ಟಂತೆ ಒಂದು ದಿನ ಎರಡೂ ಬದಿಗೆ ಮೊಂಡಾದ ನವಿಲಿನ ಕೆತ್ತನೆಯ ದೊಡ್ಡದೊಂದು ನಿಲುವುಗನ್ನಡಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ಸೇರಿಕೊಂಡಿತು. ಮುರುಕು ರೋಸ್ವುಡ್ಡಿನ ಕುಸುರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ನಿಲುವುಗನ್ನಡಿಯನ್ನು ಮುಚ್ಚಿಮೆಯ ಮೋಡ್ಕಾ ದುಕಾನಿನ ಒಬ್ಬ ನಟ್ಟ ನಡುವೆ ರಸ್ತೆಗೂ ಕಾಣುವಂತೆ ಇಟ್ಟ. ಆ ಕನ್ನಡಿಯನ್ನು ಉಜ್ಜಿ ಥಳಥಳಿಸುವಾಗ ಒಮ್ಮೆಲೇ ರಸ್ತೆಯ ಧಡೂತಿ ವಾಹನಗಳು ಅದರೊಳಗಿಂದ ತನ್ನ ಮೇಲೇ ಬಂದಂತೆನಿಸಿ ಬೆಚ್ಚಿ ಬೀಳುತ್ತಿದ್ದ. ತಮ್ಮ ಪ್ರತಿರೂಪಕ್ಕೆ ಇನ್ನೇನು ಢಿಕ್ಕಿ ಹೊಡೆದೇ ಬಿಡುತ್ತವೆ ಎಂದೆನಿಸಿದ ಕ್ಷಣಕ್ಕೆ ವಾಹನಗಳ ಮೂತಿಗಳು ವಾರೆಯಾಗಿ ಹೊರಳಿಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿಬಿಡುತ್ತಿದ್ದವು. ನೋಡುತ್ತಾ ಪೇಟೆಯ ಎಲ್ಲ ಚಲನವಲನಗಳನ್ನು ತನ್ನ ಕಣ್ಣಿನಲ್ಲೇ ಇಟ್ಟುಕೊಂಡಂತಿದ್ದ ಈ ಕನ್ನಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಾಗ ಸೂರ್ಯನೂ ಬಂದು ಆಡಿಕೊಂಡ. ಇದನ್ನು ಸಣ್ಣ ಕಣ್ಣಿಂದ ಗಮನಿಸುತ್ತಲೇ ಪೇರಿಸಿಟ್ಟ ಕಲ್ಲಿನ ಮೇಲೆ ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸಿದ್ದ 3 ಕಾಲಿನ ಮಂಚದ ಮೇಲೆ ಮಿಯಾ ಪವಡಿಸುತ್ತಿದ್ದ. ಹೀಗೆ ಮಧ್ಯಾಹ್ನದ ಜಂಪಿನಿಂದ ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಕಣ್ತೆರೆದಾಗ ಮುಚ್ಚಿ ಮಿಯಾ ಅಪೂರ್ವವಾದ ದೃಶ್ಯವೊಂದನ್ನು ಕಂಡ. ಕಣ್ಣಿಗೆ ಸುಗ್ಗಿ ಉಂಟು ಮಾಡುವ ಚಲುವೆಯೊಬ್ಬಳು ಈಗಷ್ಟೇ ಸ್ನಾನ ಮಾಡಿ ಬಂದಂತಿದ್ದ ತನ್ನ ಸೊಂಪಾದ ತಲೆಗೂದಲನ್ನು ಆ ನಿಲುವಗನ್ನಡಿಯ ಎದುರು ನೀವಿಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತಾ ತನ್ನ ಭಂಗಿಯನ್ನು ಬಗೆಬಗೆಯಾಗಿ ನೋಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಮೈಮರೆತಿದ್ದಳು. ಮುರುಕು ರೇಡಿಯೋದಿಂದ ಬರುತ್ತಿದ್ದ ಹಳೆಯ ಹಾಡಿನ ಸೊಲ್ಲುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅವಳು ತೇಲುತ್ತಿದ್ದಳು. ಕಣ್ಣು ಮುಚ್ಚಿದರೆ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ದೃಶ್ಯ ಅಳಿಸಿ ಹೋದೀತೋ, ಅಲ್ಲಾಡಿದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಆಕೆ ಓಡಿ ಹೋಗುವಳೋ ಎಂಬ ದಿಗಿಲಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಿಯಾ ವಿಗ್ರಹದಂತೆ ಉಳಿದ. ಹೌದೋ ಅಲ್ಲವೋ ಎಂಬಂತೆ ಅವಳ ಮುಖ ಕಾಣುತ್ತಿತ್ತು. ದೃಶ್ಯಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಅದರದೇ ಆದ ನರುಗಂಪು ಇತ್ತು. ಅಷ್ಟರಲ್ಲಿ ತನ್ನ ಎಂದಿನ ಕೀರಲು ದನಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಚಾಯ್ ಚಾಯ್ ಎಂದು ಕೀರುತ್ತಾ ಅಲ್ಯೂಮಿನಿಯಂ ಕಿಟ್ಟಲಿಗೆ ನಾಣ್ಯ ಕುಟ್ಟುತ್ತಾ ಚಹಾದ ಪೋಪಟ್ ಬಂದು ಬಿಟ್ಟ. ನಿದ್ದೆಯಲ್ಲಿದ್ದವನನ್ನು ಎಬ್ಬಿಸುವವನಂತೆ ಒದರತೊಡಗಿದವನನ್ನು ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸುವುದು ಹೇಗೆಂಬ ತಬ್ಬಿಬ್ಬಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಿಯಾ ಅಲ್ಲಾಡದೆ ನರಳುವಾಗ ಡಬಲ್ ಡೆಕರ್ ಒಂದು ಎಬ್ಬಿಸಿದ ಧೂಳಿನ ಪರದೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಫಕ್ ಎಂದು ಅವಳು ಆರಿಹೋದಳು.
So now you can judge how it's come out in English. At the turn of the last alley, as one goes towards the marketplace, was Muchi Mia's second-hand goods shop, a Modaka Dukan. Both those terms need some explaining. Muchi's mustache, and although his real name was Pratap Singh, because of the common perception that most people in the resale trade were Muslims, everyone called him Muchi Mia. Mia meaning sir in Urdu. But to be called thus in the unique commercial lingua franca of the city didn't offend him in the least. When someone addressed him as Muchi Mia, he would stroke his graying military mustache and twirl its edges upward. His was a shop that sold what could be salvaged from ruined or demolished houses, from rusted pieces of tin to weathered window and door frames, a worn-out wooden threshold, a splintered mirror, hundreds of handleless screwdrivers, a huge fridge like a blind ogre, old radios with their stomachs split wide open, old Rexine sofas that looked like artifacts from an Indus Valley civilization site. In the language of this city, a place like Mia's was also called a bhangar. In some 10 square feet or so, all of these objects sat together, and in the midst of them sat Muchi Mia on a tattered throne from a wedding hall, with a cigarette between his fingers, looking like a king who had abandoned the field in mid-battle. Each day he arranged the goods differently, as though they were props in a playhouse, making sure to dust them first with a yellow cloth. Like a mono-act performer, he would sit first on the throne and then on the sofa, and sometimes also on a three-legged cot that was propped up on stones. There was space to move around because the drain was covered with wooden boards. A nearby tree that looked like it was part of the shop offered some shade. Into the stage set of a social play arrived one day a large full-length mirror with worn wooden peacocks on both sides. This etched rosewood mirror took pride of place in Mia's shop, where he placed it in such a way that it could be seen from the road too. When he stood scrubbing the mirror to make it shine, sometimes the huge vehicles on the road seemed to come straight at him through the mirror, making him tremble. When it appeared as if the vehicles were about to collide with their image, their muzzles turned away and they sped off. In this mirror, which seemed to contain all the movement to and from the market in its eye, the sun too sometimes played around. Mia lay on the three-legged cot, watching all this out of the corner of his eye. One day, waking from his afternoon nap, Muchi Mia saw an astonishing spectacle. A beautiful woman was shaking out her thick hair as though fresh from a bath. She turned this way and that, admiring herself in the mirror. She floated through the old film songs coming out of the broken radio. Mia sat still like a statue, afraid that if he moved or closed his eyes, the woman would run away and the scene would vanish. Her face was elusive, visible only in occasional glimpses. The scene was suffused with a light fragrance. Just then the tea boy Popat came up, shouting in his shrill voice, "Tea, tea, chai, chai," as he knocked his kettle with a coin. As Mia wondered how he could stop him shouting, a double-decker bus came by and the woman disappeared in the cloud of dust it raised. So we are rapidly running out of time, but before Jayant goes on with more jokes, I will ask him quickly a couple of questions to bring us more to the stories in Mithun number 2, which I hope you will read at your leisure. I want him to tell us a little bit about his strategy of character development. And after that, I have a comment about language, so save some space for me. Sometimes you have a prominent character who hardly appears in the story, like Chotu in Forest of Disappearance. Or there's a character that we don't know is a real person or not, like the woman we just read about in Threshold. There are important child characters or an older person like in The Master's Son. How do you decide their development in the course of the story? Would you like to talk about at least one or two of these characters?
No, usually I don't plan my stories. People who know me from close, they know it. I just surrender to the story and I go with it where it takes me. And maybe I will pause and think from where this fellow came. For example, when I started that Threshold story, I didn't know that girl will come and start taking bath there. She just appeared and then I just followed her. So please read the story to know what happens to her, okay? So that's how it is, this thing. So I don't think much, even ending of the story also, like when you plan a structure where it should end, there also somewhere I feel story is, now it is done. That moment of transcendence or whatever we call, moment of, because I always feel life has no structure. So from where it will come for literature? Life itself has no structure. Life itself has no end. It's a flowing water. So a story or any effort through art is a temporary viewfinder, like director uses in film before. It's like a small viewfinder to make sense of what is happening. So that kind of a feeling, it's a gut feeling. And I just call it off there, yeah. And I wanted to ask you a couple of questions after this.
No, we don't have time.
No, I will.
I'll preempt your question. His question, which we discussed earlier, was what kind of challenges I faced while translating the stories. So I want to use that opportunity of the non-question to quickly tell you what were the difficulties. There were, to my mind, at least three kinds of difficulties in translating Jayant. One was the language used, and I'll say a little bit about that. The second is what is remarkable about Jayant's stories, which you heard in Threshold also, how something extremely ordinary, like a Modaka Dukan, transforms into a space of the surreal. This happens with the characters, it happens with settings, it happens with how the story unfolds as well. And this is very difficult to capture in the translation. You have to be very alert to the moment when it happens. And the third, of course, the characters themselves, which he says are completely unplanned. So there's a lot of fact-checking that happens when I translate the stories, right? I said, but you said this is happening, but this did not happen to this person. You said he came from somewhere else, but actually he came from another town, and so on. So that's Jayant's, the flow of his creative genius. Just one last comment I want to make on the language question. Jayant doesn't write in any region-specific dialect, unlike a lot of other Kannada writers. And it's what has been often called a white writing, if you like, right? So it's a very deliberate plainness in the writing. The characters are speaking in Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Urdu, whatever, right? So the writing has to be plain, with an occasional interjection in hybrid, sort of Dakhni, Hindi, Urdu, etc., which is the cultural vernacular of Mumbai. How do you capture this in translation? This is, for me, always a very difficult task. Even if you're reading the story in English, the public language of the city should make itself heard in the sentences. And this is what we struggle with at the level of, if the first draft is over, then how do you make sure that these echoes can be heard in the translation? I keep the English very plain for this reason as well, but for a second reason, that the stories are richly symbolic. There's a festive paper lantern in the story of Prakashavarsha. There's a cupboard that keeps coming up in many stories, which is really a place of secrecy, mystery, and something that contains all the stories of the household. There's the tiger in the story of the Diamond Circus. There's the pawn shop. And in No Presents Please, there's a runaway bus and even a runaway horse. Yeah, so all of these are such richly symbolic figures that they don't need, the stories don't need any verbal ornamentation. So I don't struggle too much to produce ornate sentences. I keep it at the level of the plain in order to let the symbolic shine through. Yeah? The characters, and this is my last comment, usually don't have a distinct language or a distinct linguistic and social identity. They're part of the vast migrant population of Bombay. And the dedication, which, do you want to read that quickly in Kannada? Or you don't have it? Oh, okay. Let me read to you the two-line dedication of Mithun number 2. You can read. Oh, yeah. So the dedication is to the nameless Mumbai commuter with season pass, comb and tiny lunchbox, sprinting down the platform, jumping into the local train every single day. So while these characters seem nameless and anonymous, they're very vividly portrayed, and I think that's the part of the charm of Jayant's prose. And they all carry what I call the mark of the metronome of Mumbai. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions from the audience.
A particular word from Kannada which found very difficult to translate because a lot of words I can.
Yeah, not in Jayant's work, no. Because he doesn't write in a philosophical register, so the kind of difficulty you might be gesturing towards doesn't really occur.
What I meant is that the meaning of that word which captures in Kannada language in that sentence, do you think that I have effectively translated that in...
I don't translate it to the level of the word. I translate it to the level of meaning. So these things don't bother me too much.
Okay, thank you.
As long as I get Jayant's approval if I have a doubt, then I'm fine.
Okay, thank
He's
you.
usually generous with it.
Okay.
Hindi. So that we have kept it. I mean, she has kept it as it is. So that's what, because it's a multilingual city, no? Everybody can know 4 languages. So that itself is a liberating thing. So already there is a translation happened in the story Kannada itself, in a way, Andre, the experience-wise. So those words are in their own way, they contribute.
Thank you, Jayant sir, for introducing some of the Mumbai-specific words. I think now onwards, the off word, if we hear, it will ring something else in our ears, for sure. So I was just wondering, you could just throw light on some more Mumbai-specific words, like Barobar Hai, you have something to say on those?
No, I think you will find them in the book. Don't mistake me. I mean, and one space I would like to say, which usually we talk about it, is the medical space comes again and again in my stories. Because it's again, I find that space is a very spiritual space. The anonymous doctor, anonymous patient, that anonymity is really personified in any hospital. So that also, many of my 5 stories in this book, decisive moments happen in hospitals. So this is another one angle I just wanted to tell. So anything else?
I think we are out of time actually. Where are the organizers? We are out of time, sorry. Please read the stories.
Can I ask just one question? How does this blending happen so seamlessly? Because it feels like it is the individual's characters is not just related to them, but the entire city becomes a character in their story. That's a very interesting aspect, I find it. Can you just share some insight on it, please?
No, answer is in your question itself. Thank you. That blend happens, that flow is there. That's why we write. So thank you.